Welcome back to View from Brussels. Today in the studio, I'm joined by MEP Bruno Tobback. Bruno, thank you for being here.
Hello, you're very welcome.
I want to start off with one of the biggest contradictions in Europe's green transition. Specifically, despite years of climate policy, Europe remains heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Why do you see the greener transition perhaps being a more expensive choice at the moment?
Well, I don't think it is a more expensive choice. What I think in the longer term and even in the midterm, it is a cheaper choice. And if you want an illustration of that, I think that both the last couple of weeks after the madness in Iran, but also 2 years ago or 4 years ago, sadly by now, the peak of the gas prices after the invasion in Ukraine, there was people that really, if you have your house, you have solar panels, you have a heat pump, and you have an electrical car, and I know people that do,
Yeah.
you are very cozy and comfortable. And 3 weeks ago, driving past the gas station saying €2.5 for a liter diesel in your electrical car, cruising around smoothly and being cheap and completely insulated against that. So no, it is not. It is the cheaper choice, given the current condition of the world and the fact that that is probably not going to change very soon. But the problem is, of course, that it takes the upfront investment of those PV panels, that electrical vehicle, and the heat pump, and basically all the infrastructure around it to make that transition. A transition has a cost, and the problem is not that it is expensive at the end. The problem is that upfronting that cost is for many people a barrier. That is understandable. First of all, support those that need to do it through structural policy and to some financial aid. But also, I think maybe not trying to explain to people that they all need to do this tomorrow.
Would you say that's a misconception about, and maybe that's where this understanding of it being very expensive is coming from?
It is. It is also part of the. It's also partly due to the fact that, of course, prices are right now coming down. But when you are with a new technology, such as heat pumps were a couple of years ago, or electrical vehicles were 10 years ago, you start up front with an insecure technology and uncertain results, and a high cost of learning. Whereas if you look at it right now, the prices of batteries have literally halved. The prices of solar panels have come down exponentially in the last decade, literally, basically since 2010. These technologies are getting cheaper by the day, but a lot of people are still living in the conception that this costs a fortune and I'm never going to make the money back. The truth is, of course, that we have a gradual decrease of the prices. And funnily enough, combined with a gradual increase of fossil fuel costs in the last couple of years. And so the business case, if you can call it that, is getting better by the minute. But of course, you still need to do this upfront capital investment. But to be honest, I think also that is a bit of a mindset. People have been explained that we can just keep on doing whatever we were doing. That has never been the case. The house where my grandparents lived, they had a coal stove. I remember being a little kid, and that shows my age. I'm sorry. Full disclosure here. I remember going down and getting a bucket of coal to heat the place. That house now has central heating, and yes, that was a big investment. Yes, that was a big cost. But I didn't hear people, and that was a technological transition to gas heating. I never heard people complaining about the fact that this was making their lives worse. On the contrary, they were very positive about this is an improvement in my life, in the value of my house, in my comfort of living, in my quality of life. The switch to better insulated homes, heat pumps, electrification of all those things is just the next step. And if the previous generation was able to do it and improve their lives, why wouldn't we be?
On the one hand, what we're starting to see is the energy transition being pushed through crisis response, pushed a bit further and mindsets changing, whereas your example with changing from coal to centralized heating came more organically. Do you think that Europeans have the right relationship in terms of the green transition? Why is the culture different back then versus what it is today about transitioning and improving the technology?
I think that Europeans right today are still living with the misconception that gas and oil are easy to get and cheap to get. And they have been, of course, for several decades, because the whole model that we built, the European industry, economy, but also our way of living, was built on the fact that there was a cheap and easy access to oil and gas, because of an objective partnerships with the United States that helped us, between brackets,
Yeah.
control the Middle East and the access to that cheap and guaranteed oil and gas. That has kind of changed the moment that the United States have become again major exporters of oil and therefore members of the oil cartel. And started to act a little bit or a lot funny in geopolitical relationships. Same with Russia, for example. And so the situation where for us in Europe oil and gas is easy to get to and cheap, it's over, and it's also never coming back. But the problem is, of course, there's an entire generation that has not been educated with that concept, and a lot of them are still thinking that this transition to electrification is just about the planet. That we're doing this for Greta Thunberg, and I love Greta Thunberg, for the record, but we're not just doing this for Greta Thunberg. We're not just doing this for the ice bears. We are doing this because it is the only way for us to get out of the situation that the evolving geopolitical reality puts us in, which is that oil and gas is never going to be cheaper in Europe anymore than it is in many other places in the world. And so for competitiveness, for security, for prosperity, it's just not a good bet anymore.
And you brought up electrification, and I do want to also touch on nuclear, but a bit later. So the Commission is expected to unveil its electrification action plan in July. What is something on the proposal you're hoping to see?
I would say two things are essential. First of all, I think we need a big push in supporting the investment in the switch of technology, especially for industries. I think a lot of technologically there is no problem in doing a lot of the things that we're doing with gas and oil right now to do it with, for example, an industrial heat pump. One of the nice Belgian examples is a brewery, for example. But of course, there is an investment cost that needs to be written off, and that maybe not at the very short term very profitable. And second, you do not help in making it profitable by having a situation in Europe where electricity is taxed a lot more than gas is. And so what I hope that the electrification plan will do is put forward a help for those investments, to push those investments. And secondly, a long-term visibility on making sure that electricity is competitively priced in Europe compared to fossil fuels. Because right now it is not, and that is not the law of nature. That is a fiscal decision by governments and authorities, and one that we can reverse, and which, for example, the Belgian government has committed to reversing.
So do you see Belgium being an example or setting a bit of the bar of how the behavior needs to change?
I wouldn't say we're an example in everything, not even
But maybe
not even electrification, but when it comes to the ambition to do this tax shift and to be coherent and saying that if we want people to electrify, then yes, indeed, it makes no sense to tax them out of electricity.
Of course.
At least in that thing, the Belgian government is, in that respect, the Belgian government is being coherent.
Well, I do want to also speak a bit more about heat pumps, which you were mentioning, because Europe is a global leader in the technology, yet deployment remains uneven. What do you think is stopping Europe from rolling out these technologies more at scale?
Well, the fact, first of all, that indeed there is a bit of reluctance. Up until a few years ago, I would say there was uncertainty about the technological viability. I think we're past that right now. There is indeed a huge technological development that makes it perfectly possible, even more and more at high heat applications, but certainly at low and medium heating applications in industries and in homes. It makes total sense, and it's proven technology. But of course, it requires again a retooling and a reshuffle of the whole organization of a company. When you start implementing this at an industrial level, you need to change your setup, and you're not going to do that if you're not sure about the future prices of, in this case, specifically the electricity, because it is what drives your business. And you're not sure right now what the cost of oil and gas would be, and you're definitely sure it's going to be very volatile. But at least there's going to be good times and bad times, probably. At least is what everybody is hoping. Whereas when you switch to electricity, you need some guarantees that this is going to be stable. And we can make this stable. I mean, we can make it, we can produce it in Europe. It's not a challenge anymore. The challenge is getting it to the people that can use it. So the grid investment, for one thing, and the way we fund that grid investment. But I think that the insecurity about future electricity prices and the way those tariffs are going to be is one of the things that is holding us back the most.
Beyond electrification, I said I'd bring up nuclear technology and nuclear energy. So 10 years ago, nuclear power was one of Europe's most divisive political issues, though today, particularly in Belgium,
Still not exactly consensual.
as well. I mean, I'm framing it very broadly, but today, especially because Belgium is starting to extend the life of reactors, do you see the energy crisis fundamentally or perhaps somewhat changing Europe's view of nuclear energy?
I think it's changed the debate a bit. Well, in a sense that it is, I hope, become a bit more rational and fact-based. Fact-based means that yes, indeed, if you have existing nuclear power stations, newer plants that can function, and that you can extend, that probably makes sense right now. If you want to speed up electrification and you need fast electrical capacity, then yes, it makes sense, and it's probably also cost competitive, depending on how much you need to invest in extending that lifespan. Because the misconception, and that's the other side of the coin, that this is a cheap electricity, that is what it is. It's a misconception, and it's based on the fact that people are used to those nuclear power plants running, which they do, and we've had them for many years. And forgetting a little bit the fact that if we have to build new ones, it is a very, very expensive technology right now compared to even the combination of wind turbines and battery storage, which is a solution where the cost is coming down very quick, whereas the cost in nuclear power capacity has basically not decreased over the last 50 years. On the contrary, in many cases, it has increased. And so on an economical side, on the cost competitiveness side, it has been overrun by renewables, especially when you can combine them with batteries and therefore spread the production over 24/7, and therefore avoiding the peaks. So I think we can have a discussion on nuclear on a let's say on a more rational basis, with the numbers in hand. Numbers in hand say yes, let's by all means extend them if we have them running. Numbers in hand also say that we need to very much look at if it's wise to invest in even more capacity and build new for the future. And one of the best illustrations is that for some people, the famous SMRs are the answer to all of our problems. The only problem is that no one in Europe has ever seen an SMR in the wild. There are none. If they're ever there, and if they correspond to everything that everybody promises: cheap, easy to install, and very much available, why not? But I don't see that happening yet. What I do see happening, and which is a bit worrying, is that just last week we're coming out of a big heat wave.
We all remember.
One of the things everybody seems to lose sight of is that also in France, for example, nuclear power stations have had to reduce their production because of cooling problems. Nuclear power production requires loads and loads of cooling. Whether it's in a big power plant or in an SMR, they all need lots and lots and lots of water. And given the objective fact of climate change and scarcity of water, it is not a challenge that is getting easier. And so, yeah, the nice thing about a wind turbine is it doesn't need water to turn.
On that, do you see nuclear having a permanent place in Europe's energy mix, or more of a complicated place in Europe's energy mix?
No, I think there will be nuclear capacity in Europe in the next 50 years, and I have no general religion on it. I know that some member states are also for historical and industrial reasons, and knowledge and an economic activity that is there, are betting on it. It is everybody's right to make their own choices and decisions. And if you can explain to your citizens that it will have an impact on the electricity price, by all means, go for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is going to be more than it is today. We will be replacing existing capacity that is, in any case, going out of service at some point. You cannot extend them forever. And yes, there will be some new builds to replace that existing capacity. But that's just me thinking. I don't see a scenario in which it will be a lot more than it is today.
Well, I do want to pivot topics a bit more to something which you've been arguing, which is that Europe's biggest resource is its waste that it already produces. What would Europe have to do differently in order to treat this waste as a strategic asset?
Well, first of all, make sure that we don't send it abroad. That would depend on the waste stream. Of course, it's not the same thing for every kind of waste.
Naturally.
Well, two sectors that are pretty obvious right now. We are talking about electronic waste and about critical raw materials, and the two of them are very much connected. Critical raw materials, ambassadors to the four corners of the earth, and at the same time we are shipping boatloads of waste in the shape of those tablets, phones, washing machines, dishwashers, you name it, outside of Europe, to be recycled, to have all those materials recovered, and then we buy it again. So one of those two doesn't make no sense. If this is a scarce material and you want it and it's valuable, then keep it here. The second thing is that also would allow you to develop an industrial sector that is innovative, that has new technology, that has operators in Europe. I know that for a fact in Belgium, for example, metals recycling is both at a very high end and at a very basic level is a very strong sector with lots of smaller and bigger companies. So it is employment. It is providing materials to European industry at an independent in an independent way. And so it's basically, there's so many wins that you cannot sum them up. So yes, we should definitely do that. The other one is, for example, plastics. We are talking about plastics recycling. By all means, if you want plastics recycling, you first of all need plastics, and what we are still doing is shipping those plastics outside of Europe. So put your money where your mouth is and organize those streams in a good way, and maybe learn the lessons from what is happening in several European countries, because there's a huge difference between the performance in recollecting those materials depending on which country you look at. And the EPR schemes, so the extended producer responsibility schemes, theoretically they all have the same ambitions and objectives because those are defined at European level. The actual performance is very, very, very much different.
Would you say that there's one example in Europe that could set the expectation for the EU to learn?
Not one that would cover every kind of sector.
Or perhaps maybe a specific sector that is a good
Well,
example.
I'm going to be a little bit chauvinistic here, and the proud Belgian again.
Belgian.
We're not just good in beer, but we are great in beer. If you look at, for example, the WE, so waste, electronic and electrical waste streams, the equipment, the European target of collection was supposed to be 65% by 2019. I think the average right now is somewhere below 40, but in Belgium we're at 60%.
Okay.
So we're not
Just
quite
below,
there yet,
yeah.
but I don't think there's too many doing better. So it is possible. I know that in other sectors, I think that France has a very, very developed sector also on the WE, but same on I think plastics. So there are countries where it is going well. Some countries are much better at, for example, collecting the plastic bottles because they have a fee system, so a return.
Yeah, I lived in Germany, so
Deposit return scheme, yeah. But Germany, for example, is very crap at a lot of the other waste streams. But yes, their deposit return system it's functioning very, very well.
Yeah.
So there are lessons to be learned from all of the other from all the separate systems and the performance of them. And I hope that's what the Commission does, because they promised us a Circular Economy Act
Exactly. My next
in the
question.
autumn. So I hope that that one of the things they do is that we get this lessons learned from the different member states, and we get a harmonization that is based on what works, rather than 27 different ways of doing it, which nobody trusts from their neighbors, and then prevents, for example, transport of that waste across European internal borders, which is an issue right now.
I would take that as maybe one of your hopes for the proposal or
It's one of my many
expectations.
hopes.
One of your many hopes. Could you elaborate a bit further on some of the key policy hopes that you would hope for?
In the Circular Economy Act, you mean?
Yes. Or
I-
outcomes later on.
Well, the outcome would be, I hope that we can build industrial activity and economical activity on the basis of recycling technology, but also on the potential for example, repairing and reusing, because I think there's a lot of value there, both for consumers and for us entire as a society, in trying to keep material in the loop and keeping it going, but also in developing new business models in repairability, in making sure that you can keep the value in the whole chain and in people's daily lives, that you can get some new business models in for example, trading in refurbished equipment, in refurbishing equipment, in creating jobs there, for example, but also in when you cannot no longer repair, in making sure that we can have independently sourced European materials, and critical materials especially, that we don't let escape through the back door on a boat to God knows where we would then buy it again. We are discussing, and it's understandable, mining in Europe, and everybody has these long-term ideas of we're going to mine again. We're mining right now in Europe in some places, and I have nothing against it if it's done in correct conditions. But the quickest mining is urban mining. It'll take 20 years to develop a new mine. You can go tomorrow to a lot of places where boatloads of materials, as I said before, are leaving Europe every day because we label them waste and want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
There's jobs there, there's value there.
On that, and perhaps trying to move ahead with a repair and reuse model, where do you expect some of the biggest political battles ahead before achieving that? And this is my last question, by the way, so we'll wrap it up with this.
I would say at the European level, the biggest discussion will probably be two things. First of all, how you get member states to harmonize to a level that is the highest possible level, and not just the one that's most convenient at the local level. Which is not always easy and sometimes understandable. I mean, especially for when it comes to waste collection, this is very much organized at a local level, at the local authorities level, at the city level, and so very scattered all the way through Europe in different systems that are tailor-made to how it works at home. And so harmonizing that in a way that is transparent for everyone and that makes it viable commercially is not going to be easy, and there's going to be some resistance because it will imply some changes. And secondly, there will be some pushback from some vested interests, as there always is. If you are selling virgin plastic made from imported oil, or you're selling that oil, you're not a fan of recycling. Just as much as if you are trying to sell a combustion engine car, you are not a fan of electrical cars. But the obvious fact, again, numbers are numbers. An electrical car uses 1/3 of the energy for doing the same thing as a combustion engine car. Recycled plastics require a lot less imported feedstock than virgin material. So if you want to have a European economical future, you're going to have to make the objective, rational decisions and make the changes that we need to do. And again, just like my grandparents installed their central heating, that's not an effort, that's not a sacrifice, that's an investment, and that's a positive project.
Well, on that, I think that's a very strong note to end on. Thank you so much, Bruno, for being here today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.